Hello, I'm Joseph Selbie. I'm the author of The Yugas, a book that explains the ancient Indian tradition of a cycle of history rather than a linear progression of history as is taught pretty much in all schools in the world these days. But this cycle approach to history has been around in traditions, not just in India, but around the world, ancient traditions in particular, that indicate in the past there were higher ages, and in the future there will be higher ages yet, as opposed to the linear approach to human development, which is Darwinian, that we've evolved from the hunter-gatherers and gone through the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages and finally reached today when we have evolved to a very high level. That's the current theory. But the theory of the Yugas is that it's a cycle that repeats every 24,000 years, that we go from our highest level of civilization, highest expression of human values, human abilities, and then we descend for 12,000 years from that high point. We reach a low, the opposite of that, and then we ascend for 12,000 years and come back to that point of the highest human expression on the planet. One of the aspects of the Yugas is that in each of 4 ages, and those ages are from lowest to highest, Kali Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Satya Yuga. And that not only is there this general progression from low expression of human qualities and consciousness, there is specific stages of that progression that are captured in these different eras, these different yugas. So Kali Yuga, the lowest era, is characteristically a time when mankind as a whole can only perceive through the senses, that they don't have any subtle levels of perception, that they would be a very mechanistic, very earthy sort of consciousness at that time. And history tends to bear that out, because the last Kali Yuga cycle went from 700 BC to 1700 AD, and that includes basically the kind of the lowest points of human history, including the Dark Ages. Then going into the next era after Kali Yuga, we encounter Dwapara Yuga, or the energy age. And it's said that in this age, which is our current age, that mankind as a whole can perceive subtle energy, and they can comprehend it both abstractly as matter being condensed energy, and they can experience it as subtle energy in their own bodies. And then the next era is Treta Yuga. And in Treta Yuga, it's said that mankind as a whole can comprehend mind, basically, mental powers, that thoughts, rather than being completely evanescent and nothing that you can really perceive in any concrete way, that in Treta Yuga people will be able to perceive and use their thoughts, use their mind deliberately for such things as like making a plant grow faster, or educating children by literally transferring to the child's mind knowledge that the child receives intuitively rather than in the laborious process of lessons as we do them today. And then finally, the highest age, Satya Yuga, is the time that's said when mankind as a whole can perceive God behind all creation, that you can actually perceive spirit in creation. Now these 4 ages, 3 of which are ahead of us, echo the soul's journey. They echo each of our individual journey toward that same high perception of spirit. And when I wrote the book with my collaborator, David Steinmetz, I was very conscious of the fact that in order to understand how past higher ages manifested, you had to understand the spiritual significance of each yuga. So in the past, there was a Treta Yuga, in which the powers of the mind were self-evident to people. So the footprint that was left at that time showed that man had powers. In particular, we saw the amazing perfection of Sanskrit emerge out of nothing. There was no pre-proto-Sanskrit. There was no prior languages that Sanskrit has roots in. Instead, Sanskrit came out full-blown and remains one of the most perfect languages, in fact, the most perfect language in the world. So that fact may not have been significant to illustrating the yugas if you didn't understand that subtle aspect of how the consciousness in the yugas changes as you go up and down the yuga cycle. So embedded in the book is not just history, not just archaeology, but it's really spiritual truths about ourselves, about mankind. And I was very, very pleased to recently get a review on Amazon for the book, which I'll read to you, that was really about the spiritual content of the book, the spiritual inspiration, the spiritual insight of the book that this person picked up almost entirely on rather than the history. So she wrote, "Everything about life and the universe kind of fell into place when I read this. All the questions that I had about anything seems to find its answers in here. After reading it, I felt more calm and accepting of the future of mankind and what will happen to the individual. I can get on with life now and not worry about it. Thank you for such a good interpretation of our historic past, confusing present, and path to the future." So she tuned in to this other deeper reality of the Yuga cycle, which is that it mirrors our own individual growth. So in a given life, we might also go through our own personal versions of those yugas. When we're children, it's really a time where we're mastering our bodies and understanding the senses, that we need to be able to have an appreciation for the body and for the physical world around us. But then as we grow older, we begin to understand that there's a very significant component to us that is about energy. And it's both the energy that we can harness to accomplish things, but if we're drawn to spiritual teachings, it's also the subtle energy that we can feel in meditation. It's the subtle energy that alternative healing works with, like acupuncture, chiropractic, and scores of others. They basically work with the life force in our bodies to bring about healing, to bring about a change in our awareness and consciousness. So that, again, mirrors what is happening in our current Dwapara Yuga, where alternative healing is growing and expanding and becoming more and more mainstream than it was even 100 years ago. And then, as we progress in our spiritual awakening, our own personal Treta Yuga is to begin to appreciate the power of mind, to appreciate how concentration can bring a focus for us that draws to us. It makes us magnetic for outward success, but it also draws to us thoughts and insights and self-understanding, because the mind really behaves like a radio station, and it can pull in the highest of all thoughts in the cosmos if we concentrate. And then, of course, finally, that inner journey is expressed in our own personal Satya Yuga as our experiences of spirit, our experiences of God within ourselves. And that is the real heart and soul of the spiritual journey, is taking ourselves step by step from matter to subtle energy to mind to communion with God and our own high self in that reality. So if you read the Yugas, you get both. You get the outward picture of this 24,000-year cycle, but you also get some insights into your own self and your own spiritual journey. Blessings.